We've all heard that saying, right? Think global, act local. But have you ever wondered if a small, local action can truly make a massive difference? Well, this is the story of how a single event, a literal spark of power in one small town, created a ripple effect that spread across an entire continent. It's an amazing case study in community, collaboration, and real, sustainable change. I mean, it's a huge question, isn't it? It sounds almost impossible. How can one small community in one country kickstart something that touches people all across Europe? Well, the answer is actually pretty focused. Believe it or not, it all comes down to this one event in Smolyan, Bulgaria, the Smolyan Expo. That was the catalyst for something so much bigger. So let's dive in and break down exactly how they pulled it off. Okay, so our story starts right here, in Smolyan, Bulgaria, a town that became this unlikely epicenter for a really important conversation about the role women play in sustainable energy. And get this, the most remarkable part? This whole thing happened in just 2 days. Seriously. On August 26th and 27th, 2025, Smolyan hosted an event that really punched far above its weight, bringing together this incredible mix of international partners and local community leaders. And just look at who showed up. This is what's so cool. You've got international partners flying in from all over Europe. Italy, Spain, Latvia, you name it. But, and this is the secret ingredient, they weren't just meeting with each other. They were connecting with local leaders, business owners, and community organizers from Smolyan itself. That mix was everything. Now, to really understand the Smolyan Expo, we've got to zoom out for a second. This event didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was actually the peak moment of a much larger European project. And that gives us some critical context. Yeah, it was all part of the Power of W project. Its mission was simple but super powerful. Empower women and make sure they have a central role in this whole shift to sustainable energy. It's a great idea in theory, but, how do you actually make that happen on the ground? Well, you need a local champion. And in this story, that champion was a Bulgarian organization called Young Improvers for Youth Development, or YIYD for short. They were the ones who took this big European idea and made it real for their community. And this was not their first rodeo, not by a long shot. As you can see from this timeline, YID had been building momentum for years. They were in Krakow talking about personal development. They were in Pontevedras focusing on building skills for women in the green sector, then off to Sassari to set up mentorship networks. Each step was like a building block, getting them ready to host the main event in their hometown of Smolyan. Okay, so let's zoom back in. We know the who and the why. Now let's get into the what. What actually happened during those 2 days that made the Smolyan Expo so incredibly effective? First off, they brought in the experts. But just look at this lineup. It covers everything. You've got Katerina Esayeva from a regional environmental agency talking policy, and Snezhana Orlova from the employment agency talking about practical things, like women's access to green jobs. Then you have Dr. Elena Riva bringing an academic perspective all the way from Italy. But this last one is really special. Because right there, alongside the policy experts and academics, was Nedalika Stefanova from a local women's club. Her whole focus was to ground the conversation in reality. She was there to share real stories of how women were already leading environmental change. This quote just captures the heart of the whole event. So the event's success was no accident. It was absolutely by design. It was built on these 3 distinct pillars. First, you have the expert presentations to share knowledge. Then you move to a practical showcase of women-led businesses and their solutions. But that third pillar, cultural immersion, that might have been the most important one of all. And this part is just so important. This wasn't some stuffy conference in a boring hotel. They organized visits to local landmarks like the planetarium. By sharing their local culture, they created these deeper emotional and professional bonds between everyone there. It turned colleagues into collaborators and friends. So the event was a huge success. But what happened after everyone went home? Let's take a look at the real, lasting impact of those 2 days in Smolyan. The achievements were both clear and pretty significant. First, it gave a huge boost of visibility to women who are leading the charge in sustainability. It forged real networks connecting different countries and industries. And crucially, it helped build new skills for young women in the community. But maybe the biggest win of all was just showing how a high-level European policy can actually translate into meaningful local action. But the story doesn't just stop with a list of accomplishments. The most exciting part is how the energy from the expo created its own momentum, and it just kept on spreading long after the event was over. And this is key. People left Smolyan with more than just a handful of business cards. They left with commitments. The expo directly led to new formal collaborations between universities, local institutions, and all those community networks that were there. The ripple effect was very, very real. So what can we all learn from this? What's the formula that YIYD and the Smolyan community figured out? Well, it's all about building a bridge. Take a look at this comparison. On one side, you've got these big European policies. Those are the top-down goals, the what we need to do. On the other side, you've got grassroots action, the bottom-up initiatives from women and communities, the how we actually get it done. The Smolyan Expo was the bridge that perfectly connected the what and the how. And that brings us to the ultimate takeaway. The formula for success that was demonstrated so clearly in Smolyan is this. Real, lasting change happens when diverse voices aren't just invited to the table, but are actively included, supported, and recognized for their contributions. Which leaves us with one final question to think about. The story of Smolyan shows that transformative power can come from anywhere. So, what spark of potential, what bridge to real change is just waiting to be discovered in your own community?